Hello lovelies, welcome to narcfreeformula. My name's Freedom, thank you for joining me. Alright, so today's topic is what the narcissist tells the new supply about you. So I'm discussing this because I had a chat with a client the other day and this was raised, and I realised that, you know, if she's thinking about this stuff, I'm sure that some of you are probably thinking about this as well. So let's just jump straight into it, shall we lovelies? So the first point is, you know they're going to lie. I mean, narcs lie, right? So they're lying to her and they'll be lying to everyone else about you. They'll be saying things like, you know, you're crazy, you're obsessed, you're violent, you're ungrateful, you're abusive, you're a bad mum, you're a liar. You know, they'll be basically saying all of that stuff, or they won't be talking about you much at all. It really depends on the situation. You've got to remember, narcissists will always use their former sources of supply to manipulate and control their current sources of supply. So, which leads me into kind of point 2. So for those in particular, the victim, what I call the victim narcissist, you know, the ones who like to try and make out that, you know, they've been hard done by, that you're the bad one, that, you know, you left them, you know, even though in most situations with a narcissist, when we leave them, it's because we absolutely were given no other choice. You know, they pushed it too far, they did it on purpose, and they got us to leave so that they could then, like I said, play this victim narrative. But it's, as I said, it's a double-edged sword, because on one hand, they're trying to tell the new supply, you know, that they're loyal, like they're family men, that they're the good guy, that, you know, all they ever did was love you and you were just so ungrateful, you know, and that they were there and they were there for you every single step of the way, right? So that, on one hand, sure, that sounds plausible, but then how do they justify, you know, the fact that they jumped into a situationship with a new person so quickly, and then are also, you know, doing the same stuff to them and calling them, you know, soulmates, and calling them, you know, making them feel like, you know, it's just the two of them against the world, that kind of thing. So like I said, it's this kind of double-edged sword, because they've got to spin this second narrative that they're totally over you as well, you know, and that it didn't mean a thing, and that you don't really exist to them, and they never think about you, and they certainly don't ever talk to you, you know, and they certainly haven't been begging you repeatedly to get back with them or anything like that. So yeah, they, like I said, this is kind of double narrative that they're trying to run, and they do run, and surprisingly, you know, the new supplier does seem to fall for that stuff. But, you know, it's because narcissists are super manipulative, let's face it. But they also employ certain tactics and techniques. And one of the things that I noticed in my particular situation is I realized that my ex deletes any text messages that he sent me. And how I figured this out was his texts were very erratic. I haven't had a text since the beginning of the year, so that's kind of really interesting. Anyhow, that's a side note, but back to it. So, for example, so when I first escaped the narcissist, and once, and I said, you know, he gave me no choice, but he was literally calling and texting up to 60 times a day. Like, I actually counted it. It was just crazy. But at the same time, within a couple of days, there he is starting this new thing with this other person who had known me, had known that he and I were together and married for all the time we were, blah, blah, blah. So, like I said, I was kind of wondering how it was that he was getting away with that. And then I realized he's deleting his texts so that, you know, and he'd be leaving his phone around, like, they're smart, you know, they play phone games. He'd be leaving his phone around, or he'd be saying, oh, look, you know, or here's a text, you know, from the ex, failing to mention that, you know, he had just sent 10 texts prior to it or something like that. Do you know what I mean? So anyhow, they delete the texts. And as I said, how I figured out is every time he would send me another text, or I would reply, like prior to going to no contact with him, I would reply to his text, but he couldn't remember what he'd said in the last text. You know, he couldn't remember the sequence of the conversation. Now, I've known that man for a very long time and he's not that dumb, but obviously when he's, you know, a few days have gone between his and my text going backwards and forwards, and he's deleted his, he can't actually remember what we're talking about. Fascinating. So they delete texts, and as I said, that helps create this illusion that, you know, that they're just like totally over you, that, you know, what? It's not me. You know, she's the one that's texting me. She's the one that's calling me, even though you probably just returned a call because he asked you to. You know, these are, once again, these are the games that narcissists play. So the third point that I want to say is they'll be definitely telling the new supply that it was over ages ago. You know, that basically that, you know, you guys have been on the rocks for ages, or that you left him years ago, or just something. There'll be some lie that puts distance between your relationship with the narcissist and his relationship with the new supply. Because otherwise the new supply might start thinking, well, hang on. He was just with this woman 3 nights ago and now he's with me saying that he's in love. And they might start figuring it out. Although some of the new supply aren't that bright. I mean, look, we've all been there. We've literally all been the new supply for the narcissist at some stage. And hindsight, you know, it's a bitch, but it's also a great tool. And in hindsight, I remember, you know, I used to see all these red flags and instinctively, like I knew. That's the thing, like I knew something wasn't right, but like so many, you know, victims of narcissistic abuse, I've been primed by a narcissistic parent. I had, you know, trauma, and I had some issues, and had a certain vulnerability, and the narcissist saw all that and took advantage of all of that. So even though I saw all, even though I saw all the red flags, I was, and instinctively, like I said, I had this feeling. You know, I was still just praying that I was wrong. You know, I was literally kind of deep down, I was like, something's not right here, but I just kept praying that I was wrong. And guess what? I wasn't wrong. So anyhow, back to it, darlings. This is the reality. You know, narcissists manipulate the new supply just as much as they manipulated you, the woman before you, the woman before her, the one that's coming after the new supply. You know, this is what they do. It's absolutely what they do. They lie and manipulate and try and keep, you know, these different storylines, narratives making sense. But, you know, if you actually looked at it, like the timeline and how things happened, and if you're actually methodical and thought things through, you know, you would be able to actually see quite clearly that this is a manipulation of the truth. But, you know, when you're naive and you don't know about narcissists, like, you know, most of us when we're, you know, first time around with a narcissist, we don't know. And it's not until we actually have done some work that we realize what we're involved with. But when you're in that beginning stage, you know, you think you're just having a normal relationship, that you're just in love, that they're in love. You have no idea that someone could be so manipulative, so sneaky, so disingenuous, and just such a user at the end of the day, just such a user. But anyhow, that's what they're telling the new supply about you, you know, all that stuff. All right, lovelies. Thanks for listening. Bye.